This will be the part 5 from the series of 150 keywords for polity. Now, moving on to sedition. Sedition is defined as words or speech that incite people to rebel against the government or governing authority with the intention of overthrowing the government. In India, sedition law was brought into force by British rulers in 1960s. Sedition as an offence was included in IPC under section 124A through Special Act 17 in 1890. Now, sedition is a non bailable offence which is punishable with imprisonment from 3 years up to life along with a fine. Now, the person charged under this law is also barred from a government job and their passport is seized by the government. It was initially imposed by the British colonial governments to primarily suppress the writings and speeches of prominent Indian freedom fighters. However, after independence, it was retained due to issues faced by nascent democracies like Naxalism, fear of balkanization on the grounds of linguistic or ethnic diversity, etc. Now, Supreme Court in May 2022 held that till the exercise of re-examination of the sedition law is completed by the government, all pending trials, appeals, and proceedings should be suspended. This means that there will be no registration of new cases nor investigation till the review is complete. Now, preventive detention, it means that it means the detention of a person without trial and conviction by a court. Its purpose is not to punish a person for past offenses, but to prevent him from committing an offense in the near future. Now, Article 22, Subclause 3 and Clause 3 and Clause 4 of the Indian Constitution deals with preventive detention. Now, Entry 9 of List 1, which is the Union List, Parliament has exclusive power to enact a law for preventive detention for the reasons concerned connected with defense, foreign affairs, or security of India. Now, Entry 3 of List 3, which is the concurrent list, both Parliament and state legislature have power to enact such laws for reasons related to maintenance of public order or maintenance of supplies or services essential to the community. Now, various major preventive detention acts in India include Armed Forces Special Powers AFSPA Act 1958, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act UAPA 1967, COFEPOSA, that is Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Activities, COFEPOSA 1974, and NSA, that is National Security Act 1980. Now, passive resistance, it is a method of refusing to obey the demands or commands of a government or occupying power without resorting to violence or active measures of opposition. Its usual purpose is to force concessions from the government or occupying power. It is the reverse of restraint by arms, resistance by arms. It is also called as civil disobedience. Now, moving on to defamation. Defamation is the act of making untrue statements about another which damages his or her reputation. It may be a civil charge or a criminal charge under section 499 and 500 of IPC. Necessary conditions to qualify as a defamation. The statement in question must be defamatory in nature. The allegations or statements must refer to the petitioner. There should be a statement that must be published, communicated to at least one person apart from the affected one. Exceptions or statements that can't be considered as defamation: any true statements made in public interest, any opinion given by public in respect of conduct of a public servant in discharge of his function, his character appears, conduct of any person touching any public question, publication of any proceedings of courts of justice, including any trial of court and judgments. Now, these can't be considered as defamation. Moving on, civil defamation. The allegations or statements has to be false, expressed without the consent of the affected persons. Criminal defamation. Here, the intention of the allegation must involve a criminality, that is, to defame with malicious intent. It must be established beyond reasonable doubt that the action was meant for lowering, harming the reputation of the affected party. It is bailable, non cognizable offense which can be compounded. Now, moving on to the Rahul Gandhi defamation case of 2023, on March 23, 2024, Congress leader and Wayanad MP Rahul Gandhi was held guilty and sentenced to 2 years jail in a defamation case. He has been disqualified from the membership of parliament as per section 8 clause 3 of RPA 51, which mandates that an MP can be disqualified if convicted and sentenced to not less than 2 years of imprisonment. After Lily Thomas case verdict of the Supreme Court 2013, member is disqualified automatically at the moment she is convicted for 2 or more years. Now, secession. Secession is an act of withdrawing in the political sphere. It means withdrawal of a group from a larger entity like any organization, union, or military alliance. Pressure group. Now, pressure group is a group of individuals who are actively organized and influence the working and policies of government in order to promote and defend their interests. They exert pressure on the political and or administrative systems of a country to extract benefits out of it and to advance their own interests. Interest groups are groups of people, whether loosely or formally organized, that work to encourage or prevent changes in public policy without trying to be elected themselves. Now, difference between interest groups and pressure groups. Interest groups protect a specific interest or concern, but they do not actively use pressure tactics and extra constitutional means to influence or coerce, that is, check by force the government. Whereas pressure groups protect and preserve their common interest and they actively use pressure tactics and extra constitutional means to gain and coerce the government. Interest groups are usually formally organized. Now, pressure groups are strictly structured. Now, interest groups are interest oriented, pressure groups are pressure focused. Interest group may or may not influence the policies of the government. Pressure groups must influence the policies of the government because they are constructed to pressure the government. It's in the name, pressure. Collective bargaining. Collective bargaining can be understood as negotiations which can take place between an employer, a group of employers, or one or more employers organization on the one hand and one or more workers organization on the other. Determining working conditions and terms of employment, regulating relations between employer and workers, regulating relations between employers and their organizations, and workers organization. Indian statutes and case laws recognizing collective bargaining in India, Industrial Disputes Act of 1947 to governing the investigation and settlement of industrial disputes. Trade Union Act of 1926 deals with registration, rights and liabilities and immunities of a trade union. The Industrial Employment Standing Order Act 1946 Act deals with matters such as classification of workmen, attendance, condition of granting leaves, manner of intimation to workers about work and wage related details. Now, the Constitution of India 1950, Article 19 of the Indian Constitution allows every Indian citizen to form an association, which also includes right to form a trade union. In Article 43A, the state is permitted to make laws that encourage workers to take part in the management. Moving on to protectionism, it is an economic policy of restricting imports from other countries through methods such as tariffs on imported goods, import quotas, and a variety of other government regulations. Protectionist policies help immune the producers, businesses, and workers of the import competing sectors in the country from foreign competitors. Types of protectionist tools. Tariffs. They are a tax on imports. Key terms associated with tariffs include effective rate of protection, that is ERP. In economics, ERP is a measure of total effect of the entire tariff structure on the value added per unit of output in each industry when both intermediate and final goods are imported. Nominal rate of protection is the percentage tariff imposed on a product as it enters the country. Tariff inversion is a case where tariff on the intermediate inputs are higher than the tariffs on final good, making domestic production inefficient. Import quotas. Now, a quota is restriction on the quantity of a good that is allowed into the country. Subsidies are what the government pays to domestic producers and businesses to artificially reduce the prices of domestically produced goods and make it more competitive against imports. Restrictions on FDI. Some nations use strict FDI restrictions in order to prevent foreign nations entering the market. For example, India places investment caps on specific industries. For example, insurance, which is at 74% presently in 2023 May. Exchange rate controls. By controlling the exchange rate, a nation is able to dictate how much imports can cost. For instance, if the country's currency strengthens in relation to other currencies, imports will become cheaper as a result. So, as a protectionist nation would seek to weaken or control the exchange rate to prevent this. Sanitary and phytosanitary measures, they act as barrier that limits import. For example, a banana has to be a certain size, shape, or a motor vehicles must have certain components attached. Mm, that'll be it for this part. The rest of the section will be covering in subsequent sections.